Hello, I'm Tommy Moore from the Bartitsu Lab, and in this video I wanted to talk briefly about modern Bartitsu. Now, canonical Bartitsu is Bartitsu as seen, as practiced, as recorded by Barton Wright himself. So, essentially, magazine articles, promotional materials about the art of Bartitsu, with its main purpose being to bring in punters to the club. And there are many people out there that practice that canonical Bartitsu. Then there is Neo-Bartitsu, which essentially is that plus, within a reasonable time frame, other sources that broadly match the arts of Barton Wright. So again, if we're thinking you've got the original magazine articles of canonical Bartitsu, and then you might throw in there something from an early catch wrestling manual, something from an early boxing manual, something from an early savate manual. You keep it within a time frame, you lock it in, and that's typically known as Neo-Bartitsu. And modern Bartitsu is what do we think, and again it's very personalised from instructor to instructor, what do we think Bartitsu would have looked like if it would have maintained itself as an art? If there was, say, an unbroken link between the club then and clubs now, how could it look? What would it have factored in? What would have made Bartitsu if it was around today? Now obviously with all elements of essentially archaeological humour, you are inserting some frog DNA. You're inserting your own personality, your own experience, your own viewpoints, your own understanding into a mixture. So for me, modern Bartitsu, as practiced by the Bartitsu Lab, because there will be modern Bartitsu out there practiced by other clubs which looks markedly different to what I do and what the next club does. So, my take, how it might have been. And there are some key principles for how I kind of keep my modern Bartitsu in line with what I want to achieve. So the first of it is proven by sport. So the original Bartitsu arts, boxing, a proven sport. We know it works, we know it hits, we know it's functional, we know it's good for the street, we know it's good for the ring, we know boxing is successful. We know the same with savate. We know as a competitive sport, as a competitive art, we know it works. We do it with pressure. With cane fencing and cane fighting, and there's a big culture of the transition between fencing and cane fighting. It is tried, it is tested, it is done with masks, it's done with gloves, it comes from a tradition of lekkan. We can trust that the things that go into Bartitsu historically were proven by sport. Even some of the early jiu-jitsu/judo that went into Bartitsu of its time, we're starting to look to a more randori focused, challenge match orientated brand of jiu-jitsu/judo, and again that's in the melting pot. So everything in early Bartitsu is proven by sport, it comes from sport. So for me in modern Bartitsu, I want to keep that same legacy, that same heritage. So I want to still keep in the boxing, the savate, the cane fighting, the judo/jiu-jitsu/catch wrestling. Everything comes from a sportive background. Anything new that's added in must really come from either a sporting proven background or a proven military background. So for example, I'm mixing in things with firearms and more modern weapons, and I have to take those from arts and organisations where those are pressure tested. Obviously some of those things fall outside of the remit of sport, but they still come from a pressure cooker environment. So you take things, say, from Kapap or Krav Maga or Combat Sambo, and again you build those in, as well as the things that are tried and tested and proved by sport. So for me, one of the fundamentals of my modern Bartitsu is it needs to have a record of being used, whether in the sporting environment or the real world environment. I need a tangible record of that being effective wherever possible. The next is making sure that we stay true to some of the original jiu-jitsu principles of kazushi. Kazushi means to off balance, and that could be physically pushing, pulling. It could be mentally being distracting, being a deterrent, acting meek. However you want to play the psychological game, you're off balancing people. So physically, emotionally, but spiritually, we're making sure that an opponent is off balance. Because if the opponent's off balance, we can then filter in the next two elements of jiu-jitsu, to tsukiri, to enter, and then gake, to finish. So we're off balance, we enter, and we do the job. And whether that's talking hands to a lead off to a throw, whether all of it happens in the verbal range, or whether some of it's in the striking range, some of it's in the weapon range, and some of it's in the grappling range, it doesn't really matter. But the principles of Kasushi, Sukiri, and Gake are fundamental to classical jiu-jitsu, and for me they are fundamental to the modern Bartitsu, which I practice and preach. So again, that's another thing that draws me back, that draws me to that line of Bartitsu, Kazushi, Sukiri, Gake. Yeah. The next thing is being style agnostic. So, at the time of Barton Wright, you did one thing or another thing or another thing. You very rarely hybridized and brought those things together. That's more of a modern take on the world. So for me, in making sure that it's style agnostic, making sure that if you see something and you like it and it works and you've got demonstrable evidence of it working, bring it into the family. It doesn't need to always come from a European system or from a Japanese system. It can come from any system where you find and you feel it effective. Being style agnostic, being open-minded. I don't see Barton Wright as a closed-minded man. All of the evidence of his type of club and his type of instructors demonstrates a uniquely open-minded approach. So open-minded really his brain fell out because he brought in everybody that's better than him to teach his stuff, and obviously they pinched all of his students and his club collapsed. But he was open-minded and open to new ideas, principles, and combative approaches. So again, being style agnostic is very, very important. And to add to that, learning from the best. Barton Wright wasn't the best wrestler in the club. He wasn't the best jiu-jitsuka. He wasn't the best saboteur. He wasn't the best fencer. His job was to aggregate, to look at the holistic picture of self-defense and say, I'll have a bit of that, bit of that, bit of that, bit of that, mush it together and put it in the context of modern self-defense on the streets of London at that time. So his job was to take what he thought was good, provide a context to it, and essentially build a curriculum. Build a curriculum which matched the context of what he wanted to teach and the context of what his pupils wanted to learn. And to that end, for me, modern Bartitsu is about personalizing the curriculum. I really disagree with people that just have a curriculum and they stick to it, a set curricula of things that you must learn and you must go through. You will have to teach different techniques to different people of different sizes, ages, body types, and abilities. A good instructor can personalize. Obviously, everyone can learn everything, but there are things that are much better suited to your natural mentality, to your physicality, to your context, to the scenarios, to the places that you live in or work in. Having a personalized curriculum is very, very important to me. So, my string from Bartitsu, canonical Bartitsu, neo Bartitsu, and modern Bartitsu is if I can maintain the Kazushi, if I can maintain the sporting / proven principles, if I can remain open-minded and encourage people to train with the best in their field. I go out and I train with lots of people. My Savat instructor, Alain Jean-Baptiste, he's very, very good. And I would encourage people to go train with him. There are really, really good wrestlers out there. Kenny Blanco, very good friend of mine in America, catch wrestler. I'd encourage people to go train with Kenny. There are people that are very, very good, and a good Bartitsu instructor should encourage people to take the best from the best. It's a very important part of that particular thread. So for me, modern Bartitsu should always keep evolving. Apply the same Bartitsu principle to things in the same way that Jeet Kune Do is often talked about as a process, not a product. I like to think of modern Bartitsu being much the same. If it's proven by combat or proven by sport, if it sticks to the measure of Kazushi Sukiri Kake and matches that particular paradigm, if you can remain style agnostic and always be willing to learn, if you can take the best from the best, and if you can personalize a curriculum to the context of what you're wanting to teach and what people are wanting to learn, then for my money that is a good blend, a holistic blend of modern Bartitsu, and is something I'm continually trying to stick to. I'm still trying to learn, still trying to evolve my skills in areas. I noticed two big weak spots in my arsenal, and that's ground fighting and that is firearms. Now firearms is something that I'm able to pick up at the moment because of proximity to good instructors like Brett. Ground fighting, although I have spent a long time doing judo, Newaza was never my thing. I didn't really like Newaza. It didn't float my boat whatsoever. But I need to get good at it. I need to get good solid principles in it. So obviously at the end of the pandemic, I will be looking for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I'll be looking for Samba, and I'll be looking to get a good solid grounding in those things. And I think as an instructor, It's incumbent on you to always go out there and keep improving, keep stretching, keep learning, keep competing, keep trying, keep doing as much as you can so you refine and make it a quality product for people to enjoy and engage with. And so for me, my modern Bartitsu, has its pros, has its cons, but for me, sticking to the principles which I mentioned before, that helps me keep it on straight and narrow and helps it match my particular goals as a coach, and hopefully people enjoy it as students.